Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Inventive podcast. Today I'm extremely excited to have Abhinav Duggal for the podcast. Abhinav is a partner at the Boston Consulting Group. BCG, as you may know, is world's top management consulting firms, and Abhinav has been at BCG for close to 9 years. He's an expert at strategy and operations on the sales side for SaaS companies. He spends a lot of his time helping CROs, chief customer officers at fast growing tech companies and help them solve some of the biggest problems in tech. On a personal note, I have known Abhinav for north of 15 years at this point of time. He is one of the smartest people I personally know, and that is evident from his rapid rise in BCG. I think he joined as a consultant, if I'm not wrong, Abhinav, and he's a partner in less than 9 years. So that says something about his caliber. Super excited to kick this off. Welcome to the show, Abhinav.
Thanks, Gaurav, for having me, and thanks for the kind words.
Awesome. Let's kick in. Can you start by telling us a bit about your role as a partner at BCG? Like, what does it entail, and what does the day to day look like for you?
Yeah, you covered some of it in the introduction itself, but maybe adding some more flavor to it. I spend most of my time at the intersection of SaaS and Goto Market. So, what that means is working with not just CROs and CMOs and CCOs, but a lot of sales and marketing operations teams in helping them improve the efficiency of their go to market engine, either by looking at their strategy or looking at how AI or GenAI can be deployed to improve efficiencies. So I would say most of my time at BCG is dedicated to that. Of course, part of it is also internal focused, which is around developing and furthering our IP in this space, driving the business development agenda around it. But what gives me energy is client work.
Nice, nice, awesome. And you mentioned roughly the personas that you work with. Can you also just give us a sense of what type of companies do you typically work with?
Yeah, so it's mostly SaaS companies, and I would say that within that space, it's a spectrum of fast growing companies that might have anywhere between a couple of 100 million ARR to 2 billion ARR, and some of them are even like large enterprises. So I have a fairly broad exposure to this whole space in terms of the companies that I work with.
Got it. Awesome, awesome. Let's start by jumping into what are the top go-to-market challenges that you are seeing in the market today as you've been working with companies?
Yeah, I think I would say that before talking about the challenges, maybe let me talk about the two overarching themes that are driving these challenges, right? So I think the first one that all of us are aware of is that the scenario is changing with capital becoming more expensive. So we are moving from a growth at all costs mindset to profitable growth mindset. So that's sort of one overarching theme. I think the second overarching theme is that there is massive disruption that is happening across the value chain with AI and Gen AI. So we see everyone sort of scrambling to try and get ahead of the curve. The scope here is massive. I mean, I have seen in successful transformations can yield as much as like 50% improvement in conversion rate or 20% reduction in churn. And these are like massive numbers. So now coming to the challenges, I think challenges are just the flip side of these trends. So I think the first one that I talked about, which is profitable growth. So if you think about some of the core efficiency metrics, those metrics, I am seeing them being pushed over the last couple of years. Like median CAC payback, for example, is increasing because acquiring customers becomes more expensive when your pipeline is moving slower. Net retention rates are suffering because renewals become harder and downsells are increasing because of that. So I think while you know while we have been seeing some cost cutting measures that have been taken over the last couple of years, and they have been taken across the board by all companies, these are probably one time fixes. So I think the core challenge is still how do you unlock more sustainable efficiencies in your go-to-market engine, which could be by improving the productivity of your field sales teams, which could be by improving the velocity at which your sales cycles turn. So I think like that's one big challenge. Uh, on the AI and Gen AI side of things, I think the challenge is that while there are a good amount of investments and innovations, I think the companies that are deploying AI are still not realizing the full potential from these initiatives. So either because they have not scaled to the extent that they imagined when they launched the initiative, or because the AI models are not leading to outcomes that they imagined. So there's still a lot of money that is being left on the table on the AI and Gen AI side of things. So the narrative there has flipped from let's do more AI to saying that how do we get most value from what we have today.
Got it. Yeah, I have a lot of questions on this AI on the sales and go-to-market side. But before I jump in, you mentioned something interesting, which is the CACs are going up, right? How do you guys know this data? Like, it's just so vast. Like SaaS is just so vast. How do you keep track of something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's honestly, a set of different sources. Of course, one benefit I have from the kind of work I do is that my vantage point is quite broad, so I'm able to see what is happening across different companies, right? So that is obviously like one benefit I have of first-hand knowledge. But even if you look at some of the some of the sources which are out there, like one source that I follow a lot is this Substack called Clouded Judgment. So I think that's where they report some of the CAC payback periods, and you can see how it goes up from quarter to quarter, right? So it's a mix of first-hand knowledge and a mix of some of these sources that I follow.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, we'll be sure to link the Substack that you mentioned, Clouded Judgment, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's dive deep into the customer acquisition and tech trends that you were talking about, right? Like, how have you seen the go-to-market evolve with AI, and how do you think this is going to go in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, this is where it might be helpful for us to actually take a bit of a step back. I'm deeply passionate about this space, and I can go on for as long as you want me to, but in the spirit of time, I'll try to contain my excitement. I think if you were to probably take a step back to 10 or 15 years ago, I think the first phase is probably the phase where cloud adoption became a thing, and you started seeing like digital sales model and inside sales models becoming more mainstream. But this was still, I would say, a phase of go to market where a lot of decision making was still based on tribal knowledge. Like if you were to think of sales on a spectrum of art versus science, this was still a phase where a lot of decision making was on the art side of things, which is, I know how this is done side of things. So I think probably the second phase of evolution is something that started happening 5 or 6 years ago, when the first party data that you record on your customers and the third party data sets that are out there, which tell you firmographic data or intent data about the companies that are out there. So there was an explosion in this like first party and third party data. And then from the other side, you had these data warehouses like Snowflake coming into the picture, right? So what that led to was this phase of predictive AI, which is bring this data together, create a customer 360, and then do interesting things on top of it. For example, you can make prediction as to which customer is likely to churn so that you can take retention measures more proactively. You can look at your acquisition pipeline and do way smarter lead prioritization so that you can focus your efforts on acquisition on exactly the right set of leads which are likely to convert, right? So that's sort of, I would say, the second stage of evolution around predictive AI. I think the third one is what we are seeing right now, the more recent wave of guided selling, which basically exploded with Gen AI, right? So you are seeing this plethora of use cases across the sales value chain, from uh, real-time nudges, seller assistant enablement, knowledge management and search, Gen AI based content creation. So I think like that's the sort of wave where we are living that wave right now. And I think there is a wave which is almost knocking at the door. You see that wave coming in is the wave of autonomous decision making. And autonomous decision making can mean, digital sales avatars. So, there's not a human that is making the sale, but like a digital sales avatar, which is doing prospecting for you, which is doing nurturing for you. Autonomous decision making could mean workflows which are not just answering your questions, but taking actions on your behalf, right? And like those workflows will permeate sales, will permeate marketing, will permeate customer success. So it's a very interesting and exciting time that we are living in. I think, according to me, the lines are a bit blurry. We are seeing these three different phases of evolution: predictive AI, guided selling, and autonomous decision making are all kind of present today across companies in just different stages of maturity.
Got it. Yeah, that's very interesting. I was just taking some notes as you were speaking. So the trend has been starting with guided selling into predictive AI, and then generative AI is kind of happening right now. And it's interesting that you think that we will get into this autonomous selling world, like the agentic world, pretty soon. Like we've barely gotten into the generative world. How far are we from this autonomous agentic world, in your opinion?
So I think it's hard to give like a very concrete timeline there. I think the way I think of it is that there is still probably a couple of years for the technical maturity at least to be there, where all those like we are still struggling with a lot of issues in terms of accuracy, in terms of compliance. I'm sure you'll be able to talk a lot more about it given you're dealing with it day in and day out, right? So I think there is a stage of technical maturity, and then there is a stage of adoption, and then there is a stage of value delivery, right? So it's hard to say exactly what that timeline looks like, but yeah, I mean, I we are still far away from technical maturity, so I think that's probably the first milestone for us
Got it.
to look at.
Yeah, one of the quotes that I really like about, I did a course at Stanford a couple of years ago, and one of the quotes that somebody shared there was, "The future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed." So, like, I think we had in our YC batch, like when Inventive was going through Y Combinator, we had a company in our batch or one batch previous where they were actually creating these AI SDRs. The SD, like the AI will basically go and prospect leads and do stuff. Of course, like the technology needs to get there for them to create like a really seamless product. But I feel that, yeah, like some of it is already happening today, and in the next like 3 to 5 years, I think it'll just exponentially improve.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. And I'm like, I mean, the kind of business models it will unlock is even more exciting, right?
right.
So from remote sales to uh, automatic prospecting, it's exciting to see what the future holds.
Right, right. I mean, maybe like one interesting thoughts I usually have is like if everybody has their agents, it's probably be like the seller's agent going and talking to the buyer's agent. First, they kind of figure out what needs to be done, and then the main guys get involved. So that's
Yeah,
definitely a future where we might that we might see in some time.
yeah.
Um, Moving on, what are the key points that sales leaders should consider as they are thinking about investing in technology or AI as of today for their sales and customer acquisition?
Yeah, this is a really important question, because I think this is where the gap between investment and value realization starts becoming real. Uh, I mean, I think one of the things I've seen leaders do really well is to start with a very clear point of view and articulation of the current state. And by that, what I mean is a very clear articulation of the maturity of data being recorded. For example, are you recording telemetry data or not? Are the customer hierarchies in your CRM clean, or are they dirty? Or how dirty are they, right? Do you have the right tools in place for driving sales enablement or not, right? So I feel like that's one of the most important things to do as you embark on this journey, because this is not a single function transformation, right? You need your IT roadmap to be aligned, you need your leadership to be aligned, you need to set realistic expectations in terms of timelines. So I think that's probably the first thing I would say, which is start by looking at your data maturity, infrastructure maturity, and tool maturity, and bring together these different departments to set realistic expectations. I think the second one, which seems like common sense, but not a lot of people do, is to very clearly articulate the boundary conditions of what AI would mean for them. uh, I mean, AI can mean a lot of things, right? But you have to be very, very clear that based on your specific nature of business and business context, where do you see the most amount of value? For example, if you are a SaaS company that mainly focuses on high volume SMB sales motions, right? Doing uh, predictive acquisition and doing lead prioritization will make much more sense for you as compared to doing segmentation or territory design, for example, right? So I think, again, it may seem like common sense, but I see a lot of companies trying to do five things at the same time, and in the process not doing a great job at any of them. So I think like defining boundary conditions and sequencing these initiatives is really important as you embark upon AI transformation. And I think the third one, I would say, is very closely related to the first point I made, which is that you need to see this as not a tool or a model being implemented in your company. You need to see this as a cross-functional transformation. I mean, at BCG, we have this, uh, sort of statement that we say, which is that any transformation is 10% algorithm, 20% data, and 70% people, right? So none of that data or model is good enough till you can actually drive behavior change on the ground. So, which means that as the leaders think about this, they also need to think about the investment they need to make in terms of enablement, in terms of whether they have the right tools to drive omni-channel engagement. Are they bringing along the best sellers to serve as like champions when they launch AI pilots on the ground? Are they creating like the right spiffs and incentives for some of these initiatives to see the light of the day? So I think, so in summary, I would say start with a very clear assessment of where you are today. Define the boundary conditions whether very clearly, what is a quarter one initiative versus quarter two versus quarter three initiative for you. And then the third is, think of it as like a cross-functional transformation, invest in change management. Don't live in the world where you say that, oh, like, because I bought this data or because I hired 10 data scientists, suddenly my conversion rate is going to go up. So that's probably like, I think, some of the things I've observed.
Got it. Okay. And in terms of like getting very specific in terms of technology and AI and stuff, like what are the things that you feel that sales leaders should avoid at this point of time? Like what are the red flags, if any, that they need to be careful about as they are evaluating these things?
Yeah, I think one of the red flags I've been hearing of late, a lot from account executives and SDRs, is around tool fatigue. So, which is that, there are so many different tools, and each of them is just sort of solving a piece of the puzzle for them, right? So I think a little bit of it is, these tools sort of aggressively pushing their way into their sales stack. The second is obviously like the promise that some of these tools bring is pretty nice, but in the end, what's happening is that, whenever your SDR is making a call, they have like 30 browser tabs open. in front of them, which is more distracting than helpful. So I think one of the things is that be very careful about how many new tools or new data sources you are buying. Instead, focus much more on integrating them in your stack, integrating them with your CRM data, because that's the tougher part of the problem to solve, right? So I think that's probably one thing I would say. I think the second one I would say is just related to the quality of underlying data. So I think you need to think about, so a lot of times I see like the data in the CRM is not talking to the data from three or four other different sources. The data in one geography is following some different rules of engagement, the data in another geography is following some different rules of engagement. So I think like you just need to accept the fact that anything that you build on top of garbage data will lead to like garbage in, garbage out, right? So the same amount of effort that you are investing in building these models or buying these tools, you also need to invest in getting your data in a shape that it makes sense.
Got it. Okay, cool. You mentioned about this paradigm shift that is happening, right? Or maybe like both of these things are happening right now, which is the predictive AI versus generative AI kind of parallelly occurring in the organizations at this point of time. I'm just curious, like how this is going to evolve in the future, and how are you seeing, companies changing their sales tactics using these?
Yeah, I think, I mean, both of these are heavily complementary technologies, right? So both of them will come together to deliver the end state, and like let's call that end state as hyper personalization, right? So I see that end state being delivered by a combination of predictive and Gen AI, and not one versus the other, right? So we are just at different stages today in terms of technical maturity versus adoption versus value realization, but eventually I see a convergence, right? Eventually I see some players who can bring the power of data analytics, predictive AI, Gen AI, and then activation. So if you think about like all the layers of the stack together as an offer to some of these companies, right? So um, I think that's probably where this is going to head. Hard to say when. Maybe some of it is happening already, but that's basically the end state.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Cool. Um, I wanted to shift gears a little bit and get into like specific stuff. Like, what are the top use cases for Gen AI that you're seeing in pre-sales?
Yeah, I mean, I think pre-sales specifically is one area where I am seeing significant amount of innovation happening. And I think in my mind, the top use cases I'm seeing are um, proposals, definitely proposals and pitch presentation is one area. Knowledge management is another area. I think sales enablement and coaching, probably not as much pre-sales, but that's one area where I'm seeing a lot of investment going in. um, RFP response, sentiment analysis. So I think, I mean, if I think about pre-sales broadly as a space, I definitely feel like that's one area where um, Gen AI has a lot of scope to optimize the way we work today. And I know like this is one area that you are deeply passionate about as well, and you are working with customers a lot around this. So I don't know if you have heard anything else.
Yeah, I think you mostly covered what we've been hearing as well. Like, I think proposals and RFPs, of course, is like a big area generally for a lot of companies. I think in the US, 600, $700 billion worth of projects get allocated. So it's a huge area. Sales enablement is like a huge thing generally, right? It's a lot about content, and the power of Gen AI is that it can help you sift through like so much data and help you get to like not just search but also create final outputs. So we are seeing a lot of companies trying to move in that direction to use power of AI to generate like sales enablement, marketing type of content. And then, yeah, I think on the coaching side, that is like you said, it's more on the sales, like actual sales more than pre-sales. But like there's just like so much things that can happen with Gen AI. So
Yeah.
all in all, yeah, it's just like a proliferation at this point of time for sure.
Yeah.
On the like flipping the coin, on the other side, what are the top challenges that you are seeing that the pre-sales teams are facing, be it Gen AI related or more generally?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where I would actually be curious to get your thoughts because you are working with a lot of these customers these days. I know we talked a little bit about it earlier. I think in my mind, most of the challenges are related to the maturity of the technology itself. And, like how much of a distance you are going in terms of uh, being able to take away certain tasks or make them significantly better. But yeah, I mean, love for you to add on here because I know you are deep into this right now.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think on our side, the biggest challenge that at least we are hearing from customers is just the content management piece. Like organizations just have like so much content, and sifting through this content to create something of high quality is hard. We were just actually talking to like a big company today, and they were telling us the same thing, that hey, we tried to build an in-house solution for responding to the proposals and RFPs that come in our way, but quickly got really overwhelmed because they weren't able to get these systems to output like really high accurate responses. So like creating demos with Gen AI is fairly easy. Getting something of high quality that is usable has been like a really big challenge, I feel, for sales pre-sales teams generally. Also, like the hallucinations and other pieces, as you can imagine, right, they are like a big they're kind of a big challenge for a lot of pre-sales teams. And that also adds to the skepticism on the other side. Sometimes the buyers are skeptical about things because it's like
Yeah.
this can't solve like the entire problem that we have. But generally I feel that and I don't want to hog too much time on this, but generally I feel that the workflows are still very important. I think there is an AI component, but there is also a workflow component. And I think the teams are looking for both of these things together. Like there was a phase where everybody was wowed by fancy AI demos, but now I think everybody's asking this question, like, do you have a mature product? Can we use it in
Yeah.
our stack? Can we actually get 70, 80, 90% of the automation that we need?
Yeah, no, that's bang on. And I think like Gaurav, one more thing I'm seeing here, at least from my vantage point, is that there are multiple different directions of travel as people are trying to tap into the space. There is like a relatively more horizontal approach, which is that, hey, like, instead of buying one solution for this, one solution for this, one solution for this, you buy this sort of a platform offer, and that helps you solve pre-sales, sales, customer success, maybe internal IT, HR, etc. But then there is an argument to say that if you truly want to do agentic and you truly want to do automation, then you need specialization, right? So, and then you need a specialized knowledge of a certain department and a certain vertical. So again, I don't know how the space will evolve, but I'm seeing multiple different directions of travel, and it's just like interesting to see that.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure. Like I've spoken to so many buyers who are like in the sales teams who are like completely overwhelmed with not just the solutions that are out there, but also the space moving so fast. And people are like all over the place. Hey, are you using GPT-4? Like, do you use Llama 3? Blah blah blah. So it's just proliferation of a lot of things. So I think it's up to the sellers a little bit as well to educate the buyers on that piece.
Mm.
Awesome. So I wanted to jump into the last section of the podcast, Abhinav. This is about tips, advice that you may have for sales leaders. I know you work with sales leaders day in and day out, from CROs, customer officers, and so on. What are the top tips that you would give to the sales leader given the stage of technology, the AI technology right now?
I think maybe I would just say one thing, which is kind of a summary of everything I said earlier, which is you have to manage AI to avoid being managed by AI. So, I mean, basically, what that means is that you have to be extremely intentional about what the target state of AI adoption looks like in your specific company and your specific business context. And you have to then go all in with a focus in that direction of travel rather than being overwhelmed by all the noise which is there in the market today. So, and this basically translates into the 3 points we talked about earlier, which is knowing your starting point, which is thinking about change management, which is bringing different functions together. So that's probably the one tip I would give.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, it's like it almost reminds me of the Simon Sinek book, which is Start with Why. It's like just understand like why you are doing something, what is the context inside your organization, and then figure out what you want to buy going out. Makes sense.
Yeah.
And then maybe last question on my side to wrap this up. You've had an exceptional career, like going from consultant to becoming a partner at a firm like BCG is no small feat. What advice would you have for people in their careers to kind of grow as fast as you did?
I mean, I think I don't think I've grown that fast, but to answer your question, I think apprenticeship has always been very close to my heart. So generally, my advice is to keep it simple, and by that, what I mean is make the most of whatever opportunity comes your way. Like I see a lot of folks trying to over optimize for all parameters while deciding to pick their next project or trying to pick up their next career assignment in life and so on and so forth, and sort of get
Mm.
stuck in this loop of analysis paralysis before making the choice, and after making the choice it's like expectation versus reality. So I feel like there is so much mental bandwidth and churn that goes into all of this that, like, I think one thing which has worked really well for me, and I tell everyone, is that don't try to overthink and over optimize. Just devote your full energy to making the most of whatever opportunity comes your way and making the most out of it. So, welcome the surprises that will come along the way, but welcome even more, in Jensen's word, the suffering and the learning that comes along the way.
Nice, nice. I love it. I read this quote somewhere about what. Yeah, I guess this could be attributed to you now. Like, what is the best career advice? It should be KISS. Keep it simple, silly. Awesome, awesome. It was great having you on the podcast, Abhinav. Thanks a lot for taking out the time. A lot of interesting insights and conversation.
Of course, was great chatting today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Bye.